get comfortable, get a cup of tea. You might even want to get your dinner on. It's a long video. I'm looking at this. Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Rev Dan and I'm a vicar in the Church of England. And as the Church of England comes to the General Synod in November, we come to a real crunch time of what's going to happen with these same-sex blessings. I've got the 108 pages of the paper that's going to be set out and debated on. It's called GS 2328. Living in love and faith, setting out the progress we've made and work still to do. There's still work to do. It's not being brought as a whole package. You can't, even with 108 pages, this has still got work to do, can you believe? And I've annotated a lot of this and gone through a lot to bring you my thoughts that I've been thinking as I've been reading this, and also reading different forums and what other people are saying as everybody's trying to wrestle with this and what does it mean at the end of the day. But being a vicar on the ground and the incumbent, so it will be down to the incumbents to make the ultimate decision whether this will be allowed in their parishes or benefices of churches. We need to engage and wrestle with this as this goes through General Synod. What is being talked about? It took a long time of my day off to read through this, but it's an important thing to understand what's being proposed to General Synod, because it's such a divisive thing for the church, as well as we totally are separating more and more every day over this. So I'm going to bring you my thoughts on this. I want to thank Anglican Futures, because I'm using their article. There's a lot of highlights in here, and I thought, how could I just haven't got time to take screenshots of all of this. So they've got a great summary on their website, and that link is down below, where I will be using what they've written and speaking into that, and hopefully on the parts that I that aren't covered, or some general thoughts, they'll come out as well. I've got them written down here. So please do comment below your thoughts, get that conversation going on what you think and how you believe things might go, or what you might think of this if you've actually engaged with it yourself. So before we start, let's just pray, because this is a huge thing. Heavenly Father, Lord, as we come to just hear and read and discern what this means, just may we know that you're amongst us, and Lord, that you are Lord of all, you're King of kings, you're sovereign over all, and it's to you that we keep our eyes fixed, Lord, as we go through this time in the Church of England. May we always be focused on your kingdom and proclaiming your gospel. Amen. So Anglican Futures say that, they just put a quick summary of for those without the time or inclination to read the whole document, which is great. So you can read, like I said, that you can read that yourself. Very, very helpful to the likes of me. So it starts off: the motion agreed by Synod in February has shaped the space within which work has been conducted, a space where the pastoral principles are embedded in our life as a church, and in which there is a commitment to continued learning together, relation to identity, sexuality, relationships and marriage. The motion also committed to new guidance and prayers for the blessing of same-sex relationships being issued, but with no change to the doctrine of marriage, and no change contrary to or indicative of a departure from the doctrine of the Church of England. And so we'll get into this a bit more. So the prayers of love and faith are now being divided into three sections. So first, prayers for covenanted friendships. The bishops have agreed to commend these prayers. So from November, people can use these prayers. Then there's the second section, prayers of love and faith resources, and the third section, standalone services for same-sex couples. So we'll go through each of those and through the rest. So the first part is prayers for covenanted friendships. So covenant friendship is defined as relationships of an entirely different nature to marriage. Those who wish to seal a covenanted friendship may be of the same sex or opposite sexes. The friends may be married to other people or unmarried. The friendship is by definition not sexually intimate. It will likely be expressed in practical forms of sharing aspects of life together. As with all friendships, care will be need to be taken care of to identify the nature of the covenant and how the bonds of covenanted friendship will complement other friendships and, where relevant, the bonds of marriage. So this is one thing that can be offered to anybody. It's covenanted friendships are not sexual in nature. They can be best friends coming. And to say we want prayers. I don't know when these prayers would be used at all, to be honest, unless there's a real strong friendship amongst people. And they're just very simple prayers. So I don't know when I would use a service. This is a service that actually anybody could use, to be honest. It doesn't mean anything. It's two friends who want to acknowledge their friendship in front of the church. But it's a bit of a strange thing to do, to be honest, to say we're friends. There's nothing more than that. There's no sexual intimacy. There's nothing like that. But we're just really good friends, and we want to come before the church to say that we're really good friends. You know, in a few cases that might happen, but you know, I can't see when this would be used. It is strange in the piece of paper that is being issued for and that's it. That's basically the prayers for a covenanted friendship. It does say the couple may say to each other, and I'm like, why the couple? It's a strange use of language, but the use of language in this is actually quite interesting anyway. So the prayers of covenanted friendship are there, and they, you know, I can't see how the liberals would use them in any way. You know, there's no sexual relationship between these people. It's just for friends. So what they're wanting is the blessing of a same-sex civil marriage, which, by the way, spoiler alert, isn't going to happen. And this doesn't even, it's neither here nor there. It's something that is other. So you know, so I'm going to move on from that because it's really not much, and I don't know when it could be used, but it can be used in conservative churches for friends who want you to come and say, look, we're good mates, but I can't see people doing that. So moving on to the second part of this article, prayers of love and faith resources. So this is pulling out some of the real highlights of this document. And so this says, for same-sex couples who love one another and wish to give thanks for and mark that love in faith before God, the bishops have agreed to commend these prayers on the basis that they are used as part of a regular service that does not have the PLF as their principal focus or structure. But the couple can wear wedding attire, choose readings and music certificates, and can be designed to mark the occasion. So this is an interesting one. So the prayers of love and faith cannot at all be used in any standalone service. That's got to go to 2025 to be voted on at General Synod in that November. So you can't have a standalone service that would look like anything. Yeah, in a standalone service, you know, you have standalone services like a wedding and a funeral. Those are standalone services, but you can have standalone baptisms, but you should have baptisms within a service, a normal Sunday service. So prayers of love and faith are on that latter one, where they are within a service, but they can't be the main part of the service either. They have to be part of just put in there. So if you're having an evening service, you say you're doing it on the evening prayer, and you get the prayers at the end, you can then add under column B5, I think, is these prayers at the discretion of the minister, and that's when they would come up. But it says the couple can wear wedding attire and choose readings and music, and certificates and mark the occasion. That is really changing for me the essence of the service. in that, but you could argue that we do that for special occasions, but special services as we go through the year, that might happen, because that in a sense is allowed if you're looking at. So we just had Safeguarding Sunday, and those readings were changed. But for a couple to be blessed in, to change the whole of the service and the readings, that's kind of interesting. But that's what they're pulling out here. My take on it is that it's not as big as that. I think it's put provision in there for people to be able to do that. But I think you could also read it where the minister's like, well, let's put it this way. The ministers that are going to do this, there's enough wiggle room in there for them to say, yes, you can wear wedding attire and choose readings and music. And they're not going to do it at an evening prayer. They're going to, what I've seen is they're going to say, oh, let's do this new service on the Saturday afternoon. And then suddenly when people want to come along and have their relationship blessed, we can then add these things on. But in reality, what the bishops are saying is that a normal service, that the prayers are then said over the couple, not special services. But we know that we're not doing it, but the ones who will do it will go through those grey areas and do something. So you will see services pop up on a Saturday afternoon called whatever it might be, and then this be part of it, but it will then become a main part. That's what will happen. And that will happen under the rules that are being put out, but it's not something that, in a sense, the bishop should be happening. But we move on because this will come up all later. So 3, standalone services for same-sex couples will be subject to formal liturgical process under Canon B2, with a formal consultation in the diocese and a long synodical process, with a final vote requiring 2/3 majority in each house is planned to take place in November 2025. So this really, in a sense, doesn't matter to where we are now. This has got to go through a whole process. They're going to take it out to the diocese. They don't need to, but they're going to take it out to each diocese to speak about and I think vote upon. It's going to come back in 2025 under this synod. There aren't the numbers under this synod to get it through. So all that about the standalone services at this moment in time, you could just say it's not going to happen. What we're dealing with really here is the prayers of covenanted friendships, which no one really is going to use. Very rare that be used, but it's the prayers of love and faith that will be used within the context of other services. That's the one that really we are talking about. So to go on in this article, it says work has been done to provide a theological justification for the prayers of love and faith. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty here. It says, on the basis that it is a pastoral outworking for a time of uncertainty that respects the Church of England's unchanged doctrine on marriage, and that it does not indicate a departure from the doctrine of the Church of England in any essential matter. Now, going through this, and if you've read it, you can pick out quotes or things in there that if you want to play bingo, LLF bingo or PLF bingo at Synod, I think you'll start hearing some of these, like any essential matter, time of uncertainty, goods in a relationship. There's these words that keep cropping up through this document, and that's what's here already. It's been brought out by Anglican Futures. Time of uncertainty that respects the Church of England's unchanged doctrine on marriage. So they're saying that we're in a time of uncertainty. I mean, whenever has there been a time in human history that there hasn't been a time of uncertainty? And the essential matter. So this is words that are being put in. So if you remember the amendment that was voted through back in February said that the Church would not change, that this prayers of love and faith and LLF would not change the doctrine of the Church of England. And so now we see this added on, that it won't be a departure from the doctrine of the Church of England in any essential matter. And the essential matter is taken from Canon B2.1 and Canon B5.3 or 0.3 and 0.1, which says in worship. So this is kind of when we're speaking about worship, that we don't go from the doctrine of England in any essential matter in worship, not in the doctrine of the Church of England. They're talking about the context of worship. So that's what I mean. There's a lot of wordplay here, and what do words mean? So in any essential matter has been now added in to this. Time of uncertainty is another thing. So this article goes on to say, on any essential matter are the words introduced to the Church of England worship and doctrine measure to enable the synod to make small changes in matters which are regarded as doctrinal, providing that the essential doctrines of the Church of England are safeguarded. The Corns Amendment to the February motion in 2023 did not include the words in any essential matter, but this appears to have been ignored. And that's what I'm saying. So the talk about worship and the doctrine measure, and I've looked at these two canons which have been mentioned in this document, and it's talking in that context for me about during worship, but not the doctrine of the Church of England, which it doesn't change the doctrine of marriage. So any essential matter has been added on, and so this is a problem that I have with this. It's 108 pages. It when you have to start adding words and changing words and playing with words in the amendments, not to indicate a departure from the doctrine of England, it uses words, it's contrary to the doctrine of the Church of England. So they're taking the word indicate and replacing it contrary to. Instead of taking it what it is, it's taking these words and adding them, changing them, putting it in an essential matter. And there's a lot of wordplay going on here. And if you can't just put it straight and say this is how it is without introducing all these things, it's concerning. It's kind of concerning for me. It's like, you remember Vicky Pollard from Little Britain, and she'd be asked a question like, have you done your homework? And instead of saying no, she would go, well, I went down I was doing my homework, but then someone knocked at the door, and then I went out with them down to the chip shop, and then when we was down the chip shop, we saw Thingy, and Thingy was going out with her, and then they went off for a snog out it's all this, just answer the question, and this feels, when I was reading it, a bit like, just get to the answer. You're having to jump through hoops and do this complicated thing to say what we're doing is right, and it doesn't feel right. But also, to be honest, I remember an old deputy prime minister who's in my Curiosity Church speaking about government and what it's like in government at a men's breakfast, and I remember him saying, we come up with this great idea and we would go to present it or want to present it to Parliament, and the Treasury would say there's no money, and then we redo it, and then we take version 2, and the Treasury say, yeah, you got enough money for that. So they go to the opposition and say, well, you voted with us for this, and they say, no, it's far too good. We're not going to vote for that. It's going to make it look too good, and go through all these scenarios, and instead, then we get to version 6, and then we present version 6. And as version 1, and we know it's not great, but that's the only thing that everybody would agree to. So we're going to the public and say, hey, here's this thing, and it's the only thing that would get through. And I wonder, in some way or form, it probably won't be, but it feels like that. What people wanted, that first version, is nowhere near what is presented. What is being presented is not good. It's not good. There's a lot of wordplay. There's the theological treatise at the end to justify a lot of this. Is very there's no. Well, if someone said to me, Dan, put this argument forward for this, I'll go to the Bible and start from the Bible, and then look at other doctrines and things like that. But the Bible is hardly mentioned to justify anything, and I think that's the starting point. And for me, that wasn't strong. You got to challenge and to build on arguments with the Bible. There's very, very little parts of the Bible in here. It's more legal and wordplay. But that's my opinion, as they say. So here are a few quotes to give an indication of the theological underpinnings. The prayers of love and faith were conceived as a genuine pastoral response to a particular, very focused question regarding long-term, faithful, committed, exclusive same-sex relationships between Christians who are seeking to live as faithfully as they can as Christians and LGBTQI+ people. The PLF falls short of speaking of the entire relationship as a way of life, which makes them very different to marriage. So throughout this document, it talks about it's not marriage, but then they got this thing like with marriage. They keep referring to marriage quite a lot. It's like, it's not marriage, it's nothing to do with marriage, but then let's refer to marriage. And they're trying to differentiate, but it kept bringing marriage in. And so with this, they're saying it's a pastoral response to this. What again, read this, and this is where I think the debate hasn't happened enough, because it says exclusive same-sex relationships between Christians who are seeking to live as faithfully as they can as Christians. And in my mind, this is lesbian and gay people that this is applying to. Bisexual, yeah, if it was I'm bisexual but I want to be with, if it's a man, another man, a woman with another woman, but I'm not ever going to be with somebody else. Transgender, that's a question. Queer, but the biggest one for me is plus. They've actually put plus in this document, and there's no definition for what plus is, and I think that's very dangerous. You can't just put plus, because plus can mean anything. So if this goes through and these prayers, this is being commended, and we're not saying what plus is, then we have to be well. We need to know what that is. Basically, you can't put something forward and then put plus in there, meaning it's everything else, and then not defining what that is, and then people coming forward and saying, well, I want to be blessed for this because this is what this is saying. But so on the one hand, you're saying long-term, faithful, committed, exclusive same-sex relationships, but on the other hand, you're saying plus, which either you're accepting as plus or you're excluding, and it needs to be made clear. But will they do that? It's at quite a late stage. That needs definitely debating. So it goes on. The House of Bishops' guidance on same-sex marriage in 2014 states, as we said in our response to the consultation prior to the same-sex marriage legislation, the proposition that same-sex relationships can embody crucial social virtues is not in dispute. Same-sex relationships often embody genuine mutuality and fidelity, two of the virtues of which the Common Book of Prayer uses to commend language. The Church of England seeks to see those virtues maximised in society. So this is so what it does in the document. It says, it starts saying, in same-sex relationships, that there's goods and there's good things happening in those relationships. And so what we got to do is take those goods and understand that they're good for society, and not to dismiss them. And here it says, genuine mutuality and fidelity to the virtues of in the Book of Common Prayer. But you can't remember when the Book of Common Prayer was written. There was no way associated at all with same-sex relationships at that time at all. And so it's now bringing an understanding from what's today and trying to apply that to what was written in the past, and saying, well, that's okay, it matches up. Well, when the Book of Common Prayer was written, it didn't have two same-sex couples in mind. Yes, those things can be found in those good the goods in those relationships, but you can also apply that to any relationship. That there, even if quite a difficult relationship, you can still find good stuff in there that is happening in there in relationships which we don't agree with. So yes, it's like, I don't deny there's good things in same-sex relationships, and they can be good for the society around them, but we as a church don't agree that two people can be together in those relationships, especially a sexual relationship at that. And so we can't go, well, there's good things in there, so it's okay. And this feels like it's a bit like that. So it goes on, the church is called to be a community seeking to discern God's faithful and holy love in action. God's action in history never fails to surprise by taking root in unexpected places and among unexpected people. While there remain significant disagreements about the extent to which committed, exclusive, faithful LGBT plus relationships carry within them the goods of holy and faithful relationships, the prayer of love and faith are offered in recognition of hope, promise and joy that those relationships can show forth. Again, here it's coming, and you see the direction it's taking. It's saying now in God's action in history never fails to supply by taking root in unexpected places and among unexpected people. So by saying, oh, there's in these relationships it could be a good thing, oh look, that's where God is as well, and that's a big statement, you know. While there remain significant disagreements to the extent exclusive, faithful LGBT, you notice they've dropped the INA on there, plus, but they still got the plus relationships, carry within the goods of holy and faithful relationships. Well, you got a big word there as well. You got holy. Now, well, this is where the church is divided. Some will say, yeah, it's holy. The liberals and the traditional conservatives will say it's not holy because they're living a life that is contrary to the Bible. That marriage is between a man and woman, and by the way, sorry, not talking about marriage here because they keep it away from marriage, but sexual unions are between a marriage and a woman, not between two people of the same sex. And so that's another big thing which it might come up, but if not, I will say now that it's a case of, remember that American army thing, don't ask, don't tell. So when people come forward to ask for prayers of blessing, you don't ask them if they're in a sexual relationship. They don't tell you that they're in a sexual relationship. You assume that they are not. And I think that, again, that's a big thing. You know, you're not going to speak about aspects of what relationships are. It's difficult to speak about it on this side because, you know, I just wouldn't do it. So I'm just trying to imagine on the other side. I think, you know, if you're liberal and you've been told don't ask about if they're having sex, because obviously if they disclose that to you, do you go then, well, you're, you know, sex is, because what this document says is sex is inside marriage. It upholds that sex is for holy matrimony, for marriage, and it should be happening outside. So if you're a liberal and a couple came to you and said, yes, we're having sex, do you go, well, now I can't bless you because you're going contrary to what the Bible teaches and the doctrine of the Church of England? And so you can see how it's messy. You can see how the liberals are not happy at all as well. And don't ask, don't tell. But sex for relationships is a hugely important thing. It's as they say, for between a man and woman, it's a foundation, especially for children as well. But it's such an intimate thing to bring two people closer together. So it's messy. It's messy. So let's go on and try to get through. It'll be a longer video, this one. Grace within the pastoral provision may be first and foremost grace towards one another, in recognition of our common humanity, our common frailty, and our collective not knowing. It is a choice to care tenderly for one another by listening to those who say that the traditional discipline of the church has laid unbearable burdens upon them, which they, after careful prayer and study, do not think are justified. And it is listening carefully to those who, after equal prayer and study, still think that the traditional teaching and discipline of the church are right and life-giving and cannot be moved away from, even if the change is a change in pastoral practice rather than a formal change of doctrine. Grace is what is leading us towards trying to find ways to enable every member of the church to live as faithfully as they can at a time when we have not discerned a common way forward. And in this, you know, we are just so far away from each other. that I don't think there can be a common way forward. We just can't. After careful prayer and study, it's not even careful prayer and study, to be honest. It's there. It's kind of black and white. I read the Bible, and I don't need to pray over this or study this. There's certain things that are clear, and there's certain things that are clear for me which are difficult personally. When I became a Christian and I read the Gospels, I was like, this is horrible. You want me to change so much of my life, and I didn't think that or know that. So where it says heavy burdens and that the church has laid heavy burdens, it's not the church, it's God through his Bible saying this is how you should live. And I was like, I can't live that way. I don't want to change this and change that. But actually, in becoming obedient, and this is being about obedient, I've lived a more fulfilling life through what God has told me, even if I felt they were heavy at the start. But we are so far away, still striving to find common ground, and I just don't think we will. And what this has done, this LLF and this PLF now, is divide us further as we go forward. And really, I've been ordained now for 8 years. I never known the church so far apart, and I don't know if we can come back. I think that lines have been drawn by this, and this and as I said previously, has really not made anyone happy. So the people with a traditional view are not happy, probably a bit more happier after we read this and see what it is, and they are actually saying, the bishops are saying marriage is between a man and a woman, and sex is for marriage, but they've also at the same time they've accept the liberals, and quite big time actually, with what they have been offered, and they've been offered nothing, because what they've been offered, they have to work to make it to make things work, to make it look like something substantial, because it's not substantial at all. It's an add-on in a service, what they've been offered, and they're not happy. So you've got these two sides who are divided, who are also both not happy. You would think, well, if you were on a trajectory, one side would be happier, but they're both not happy. So let's go. The marriage service therefore blesses an individual couple and affirms marriage as a good within which blessing is more likely to be experienced in its fullness. This understanding of marriage does not preclude the possibility of other relationships being good or warranting some form of blessing, but it does set aside marriage as a distinctive form of life. The Book of Common Prayer refers to this way of life as the estate of marriage. The PLF, in contrast, identify goods that bear a family resemblance to marriage, but do not define a specific way of life in its entirety as a way of blessing. There is no definition of a specific estate. As such, it gives a different context to the prayers of love and faith as its optional prayer of blessing. The blessing of the PLF is a blessing on people, as with all other blessings. It is a prayer for God's action to bring flourishing and fruitfulness, and enables the church to stand alongside a couple to affirm their desire to walk more closely into the ways of God and to receive the blessings of the kingdom. You see, just in that it says marriage is an estate, marriage is something, but the PLF, they're just a blessing on people, but they're nothing. It's just a prayer so you can publicly declare in front of your church that you're a couple, and the church is affirming their desire to walk more closely with them, and that they're affirming their desire to walk more closely in the ways of God and the blessings of the kingdom, which again conservatives will say you can't do that. But it offers nothing to them. No wonder the liberals are fuming at this, because they're even moving it away. They're defining what marriage is and saying this is not even recognised as anything. It's a distant cousin, but I don't think they even see it that way. So it goes on to talk about the pastoral guidance. It says pastoral guidance has been provided, which has a number of implications for churches and clergy. 1. The decision to use or not to use the prayers has been delegated to the local church, So though clergy are entitled not to use them, the guidance says, while this more informal use of the PLF as part of regular worship is left to the discretion of the minister, it would be wise for them to discuss use in public services with their PCC and work within the tradition and sensitivities of their local context. A conversation with the PCC would need to be conducted according to the pastoral principles. So if you hold a traditional view, even though you're the incumbent and it's totally down to you of choosing whether to use it or not, what they're now suggesting is you have a conversation with the PCC, use the pastoral principles as a way of having that conversation, because it could be a difficult conversation. Work within the local work it within the tradition and the sensitivities of their local context. But again, this is the use of language in that sense of the context changes around us. The world will always change. The world will always move one way or the other. The gospel doesn't change. So the sensitivities of the local context will be, yes, the sensitivities of the local context, but the gospel is still the same. And same with the tradition as well. So they want us to go and speak to the PCC about it, which will be very difficult for some incumbents who will want to stand on whether to use them or, and even to be fair on the other side, and the PCC might not want to, but at the end of the day it comes down to the incumbent. So it could be a fallout, but the incumbent will just say no at the end of the day. Goes on to say, using commending prayers as part of regular worship can only happen at the discretion of the minister with the cure of souls. No minister can ever be forced to use the prayers against their conscience. Ministers who use commended prayers must ensure that they comply with the requirement that they should not seek to replicate or imply an equivalence with holy matrimony, and if they are not, the minister of the cure of souls must obtain permission to do so. So I say the minister of the cure of souls, it's down to their it's their choice. But what's here as well, what's important is going back that they could wear marriage wedding dresses and stuff. It says here that they're not to replicate or imply an equivalence with holy matrimony. So there's a danger that ministers could be challenged in one way or the other, and we'll get onto that in a minute, if it looks like a wedding too much, and most of them, to be honest, will do. So it says, while use of the commended prayers from the resource sections of the PLF is down to the incumbent, it would be very wise for the decision to be discussed with the PCC and some consultation with the wider congregation and be made known ahead of time. Again, when it comes down, in a sense, you're trying to get everybody on board with this, but this is so divisive, and we know it's going to divide churches and PCCs. It's still going to come down to the incumbent's decision, and that's the decision that I've made, and I know that the people on my PCC and in my church would disagree with my stance, but it's my decision at the end of the day. And every church now, every PCC and every incumbent what they're suggesting is to go down this route, but it will come back to the incumbent. But it says, and listen to this, when there are deep differences, it can be helpful for the parties involved to take space for de-escalating conflict and reflect prayerfully. This might entail a season in which a vicar and PCC are advised to take a period of time for prayer and further learning for consideration again questions about PLF. During this time, the disagreeing parties might undertake the LLF course together and or the pastoral principles course, or even simply agree to hold a time when the matter is not on the agenda. Bringing in outside trained facilitators would also be important, but would need to be at the invitation of with the agreement of the incumbent. If differences over PLF and the wider questions it connects to threaten a pastoral breakdown between clergy and PCC, the archdeacon should be brought in at the earliest opportunity. So, this is big in itself. Go ahead and do this, even though the incumbent with the cure of souls has got this decision. And if it does break down, and it gets it's going to be a very difficult time for so many people involved. And bring in the archdeacon. But what if the archdeacon and the incumbent see differently to this, and the incumbent can't work with the archdeacon? That feels that they're not in communion with the archdeacon or even the bishop as well. So this goes further and further outwards, and it makes it more difficult. I think the difficult for me on this one is, like, if you've got the cure of souls, you have ultimately the decision, and they say that at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the incumbent has the ultimate decision. Yes, I think it's important in one way or another to speak about to the PCC and be open about speaking about it, and perhaps if the wider church wanted to speak about it, but to put this big paragraph in, talk about breakdown relationship, get the facilitators in, get the archdeacon in, and at the end of the day, it's the incumbent that makes the decision and holds to that decision, then I think this is... Anyway, moving on. 2, churches should be transparent about their intentions. So it says, for churches that choose a more limited approach, they will need to decide how far they explain this in their public presence, such as social media, and how to respond pastorally to questions from those who ask. Transparency and honesty, with kindness and generosity, are strongly recommended. Specific wording should be thought through locally and reflect the particular concerns of the parish, and make every effort to be positive without being misleading. Suggested wording will be provided. Going out on social media to state where you are, whether you're for it or against it, will, in the parish, cause a few upset people on either side. And so stating where you are, you take a proactive approach. Well, I've been someone who's gone through it myself. It's like, well, you can, but again, it takes a toll. It takes a toll. And so going into the public and saying, well, you are on social media, I think that really needs to be thought through. It might be best to put it on your website where you are. But again, you don't have to. This is the other thing. You don't have to do anything. Churches should strive for a position of maximum transparency over the practice, so that couples who attend the church regularly would know what the stated position is, and those who are not regular attenders would be able to find out easily. It would be helpful to be clear about how far a church may go. Would they offer private prayers at all, private prayers only, private prayers as part of a Sunday worship, as well as what they will not do, a standalone service following a civil ceremony, or using prayers of blessing. However, no church is required to make their position known. And that's the thing. You want to put this out in the public. I think that's down to each church and each incumbent. But it doesn't have to be done. And trying to explain these different things, whether you do private prayers or private prayers only, or part of the service or what, is just confusing anyway. So if people are part of the regular Sunday service, they should know where you stand. And other people, they can contact you and you can explain. And again, that's happened to me. People have contacted me and I've explained where we stood. There is no formal or legal requirement for local churches to make the whole of their theological views known. Detailed statements on websites may not be the best way to convey information about deeply sensitive pastoral matters, but this needs to be balanced by concerns for transparency and care for those looking for a church that will welcome them. Every church should be welcoming. Every church is... If a church does not offer the PLF, it would be pastorally appropriate to have draft details of how couples can contact someone to help them find the church that does. The deanery does see point of contact. Yeah, which is what I've done. So 3, if a couple asks for a blessing, clergy will be expected to explain their position without coercion or judgment. If an inquiry is made from outside the regular congregation, an appropriate pastoral response needs to be made, which explains the reasons for not offering the prayers or service that a couple is requesting, without trying to coerce a couple into the church's perspective. Well, to be honest, I think any vicar worth their salt would not try to coerce a couple into the church's own perspective. When I got a request, I stated what I believed in, that I would help them find a church that would be happy to do a blessing. So contact with the couple should always be sensitive and generous, and avoid being judgmental or coercive. Local churches need to be aware that whatever their reasons, and however they try to explain them, the simple fact of saying no can be taken as deep rejection and judgment. Entering into protracted conversations or arguments over this is not appropriate. Well, this is just an obvious statement, and you can't do anything about this. And this is why it's so divisive. This is why it's so divisive. So if a couple, this is why it's saying, do you put it out online or social media? If they're saying if a couple contact you and, people can take no as a deep rejection and judgment, putting something out on social media into your local Facebook group is opening yourself up to a big, it could not end up well. So 4, if a couple asks for a blessing, clergy will be expected to signpost them to a church that will offer the service. Yep. So, I'm just going to leave that. Engagement with church schools. The prayers of love of faith have been authorised for use, but not everyone will agree that they should be used or want to use them. And school leaders must recognise the validity of these different positions within the Church of England. All relationships between schools and the parish, churches and clergy should be built on mutual trust and understanding. This should include understanding and respecting the different contexts of schools and parish and the particular legal responsibilities which schools exercise towards their staff, student staff and other stakeholders. And this is difficulty with schools. Schools are, as we've seen, and it's been brought up in the House of Commons about teaching children, especially primary school children as well, about sexuality and gender and things like this. And it's very different to what a lot of churches would see as not right teaching, and there's already a clash of two worlds there. And so having these prayers of love and faith and then advertising it, and if you've got a local Church of England school and they say, well, that isn't compatible with what we believe, and the Church of England school is, again, it's going to cause division, and the sad thing is, we spend a lot of time building up relationships with schools as well, but we have to stand on the gospel, and we have to proclaim the truth in a world that is forever changing. And this comes back, and this is the language used in there, it's forever changing, but the gospel isn't changing, and so there could be a difficulty in the relationships with schools and finding a way forward. And it's not just the schools, it's, you've got the governors and the parents and the PTA, and it's that one needs to be handled really delicately. So legal protection for clergy who use the prayers. It says here, and this is huge, therefore it is possible that someone objecting to the use of the prayers in a particular circumstance could bring legal action, most likely under the Ecclesiastical Jurisdiction Measure 1963, against a minister for using the prayers. This might be on the basis of a claim that the PLF themselves are unlawful, because, it might be claimed, they are contrary to the doctrine of the Church of England, or indicative of a departure from doctrine in an essential matter. The House has considered this question, and its views are set out in Annex A. However, it should be noted that the views of the House expressed in this paper and implied in its act of commending the PLF resources do not provide an absolute defence against proceedings. Provided the minister had used the PLF resources in accordance with the pastoral guidance relevant at the time, any minister subject to such a complaint could cite the House's views in his or her defence, but it would be for a tribunal or court to make the final decision. Did you hear that? If someone makes a complaint and you got to go to tribunal or court, you can say the House of Bishops, this is what they put forward and this is what they put together, but it would be for a tribunal court to make the final decision as to whether these were lawful. And if not, you're going to get disciplined and you're breaking. And so why would anyone who's liberal want to go down that route? Someone will. Someone's going to do it. Someone's going to put a complaint in. And then so what it's saying is, like, the House of Bishops have brought something forward that not even they can say is you can use it safely, that one person will have to go to a tribunal or court and to go through that to find out whether the House of Bishops are right or wrong. That's a big thing. Where's the legal advice here? And the legal advice is basically saying, we really don't know unless it's going to be challenged. And so it's not watertight, and this isn't a thing that's been brought. If I was on the other side, I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to I would want something that is watertight. Don't want to put myself and my family through that, but it's not watertight. But it goes on to say, in just for us who are on the traditional side, very simply, who are challenged for not using the prayers. The Equality Act does not regulate religious worship, and so is not applicable to the use of PLF. Quite simple, but if you're on the liberal side, watch out. So this is where it gets interesting. Legal protection for lay people. Working in churches that offer PLF, but they disagree. If the PLF are being used in the context of a regular act of worship, this would be more complicated, especially in the case of an organist or member of the choir if they have a contract, and especially in smaller churches where there may not be other organists available locally, even at deanery level. In both cases, a pastoral conversation with lay people involved, which respects their conscience, would need to happen with a view to reach an agreement on the way forward. If employment issues arise, advice should be taken from the archdeacon and or the diocesan registrar. Again, when it comes to employment law, and this is not clear cut. Holding offices in church that a secular employer objects to. A specific concern has been mentioned is whether lay Christians may find themselves discriminated against on the grounds of their beliefs by their employer or in other non-church contexts. For example, an employer arguing that an employee who is a church officer in a church that takes a conservative view on LLF is behaving in a way that conflicts with the employer's values or expectations, and either disciplining or even dismissing the employee. The Church of England could not, of course, prevent employers from taking action in this way. An employee so affected will have a case for defence under the Equality Act, though for the employee, having to sue their ex-employer for unfair dismissal and discrimination is much less satisfactory than the employer not seeking to dismiss them in the first place. The Church cannot prevent such discrimination happening, nor can it undertake to stand behind everyone who claims such discrimination. But the Church could choose, as it's part of its pastoral reassurance package, to seek to shape discussions about these issues and discourage any such discrimination. Further work to be done. That's huge, right? If you're working in secular employment and you're in a church and you're known to go to a church that is conservative and doesn't offer these, they can say you're not acting within these guidelines, and it conflicts with the employer's values and expectations, and there could be disciplinary processes or being dismissed. The Church of England can't do anything to protect them apart from offering it as part of its pastoral reassurance package, which I haven't seen yet. So that is so scary, that this decision that an incumbent can make and that you attend that church can affect your work life so much that you could get a disciplinary or even dismissed over it. And it's quite astonishing to have that in here. I was a bit shocked at. It never even occurred to me that something like this could happen, but it could. So something that's been discussed a lot is formal structural pastoral provision. So it says here the bishops have agreed to further urgent work exploring formal structural pastoral provision for churches and individuals for whom the introduction of the PLF is a matter of serious concern, requiring legal protection against being forced to use the PLF and a clear way of distinguishing their different views. Goes on to say a range of ideas are then described, but the report continues. In committing to carefully explore and consider how much provision might be taken forward, the House is not at a stage advocating for formal structural pastoral provision. Many key policy questions remain to be considered and answered in this further work, including how much, if any, delegation of functions, and whether this is a national policy or a policy which could vary across dioceses or regions. The House recognised that these issues are contentious, that many would be opposed to such delegated oversight, and that for others they would not appear sufficient, falling short of more radical proposals put forward by some. They would in any case pose questions of ecclesiology and about the underlying theology of the church or of being one church. In considering these questions, the House will need to reflect on the theology of unity and how far that condition this work. Nevertheless, the House has been asked for further work to be done on these issues. All further work described in this section will need to involve engagement with those directly affected from a range of church traditions. So there's going to be no differentiation going forward. They haven't done the work. Again, it's about bringing this package half-baked back to Synod without all of these. So what do people who really can't agree with just the prayers of love and faith being commended do? Well, there's no differentiation. It's now down to what the individual will decide what they will do. And because of the way this has been brought to General Synod, and I think people are considering a lot more, and a lot more people are considering what they're going to do. And I think that in one way or another there'll be a bit more action, but there's nothing going to be structurally different or put in place anytime soon. So how are individuals going to respond? I would say put your comments below, but no one's going to say what they're going to do at the moment. So as we come into land, it finishes what happens at General Synod in November. It says several sessions have been set aside for the informal and formal discussion and debate, culminating in a vote, which will require 50% probably of all three houses on this motion, though it is likely to be amended during the debate. Remember, when you're watching it, to look out for those key things: any essential matter, time of uncertainty, goods of relationship. There's also another one, general Anglican approach. That's what has been said a lot in there. There's a general Anglican approach on this. But please explain someone what a general Anglican approach is. Please put those in your comments below. But this is the motion being put forward by the Bishop of London, and this will be amended so many times. And will it get through? So the Bishop of London to move that this synod, conscious that the church is not of one mind on the issues raised by living in love and faith, that we are in a period of uncertainty, and that many in the church on all sides feel pain at this time, recognise the progress made by the House of Bishops towards implementing the motion on living in love and faith, passed by this synod in February 2022, as reported in GS 2328, and encourage the House to continue its work of implementation. Do you think that's going to get through? Do you think I don't get through like that? It will be amended, but will it get the required, if it's by houses, which I think someone will say, 50%? I don't think so. Put your comments below. So it's all over the place. I know that's a very long video. There's a lot to get through, and in fact there was more. You could spend a lot more, but I wouldn't bore you. These are the headlines, but there's a lot more that you can dig down into. I encourage you, if you're incumbent, to read this, get your head around it. Any other people as well who's got an interest, curates, ordinands, going on to be incumbents, this is something that you need to read, to understand, highlight, write down. This isn't going away. It might, well, whatever happens in November, it's going to move forward one way or another. It's not good. That's it's not good. We're more divided as a church than we have ever been, and we wait to November to see what happens, to see how we as a church move forward.